Welcome everyone to the Revolutionary Man podcast. It's where we challenge men to lead with intention, live with integrity, and build a lasting legacy. And I'm your host, Alan Tomonso. When was the last time that you truly slowed down? It's not because you were forced to, and it's not because you crashed, but because you made the decision to slow down. As men, we're going to be wired to believe that slowing down is going to either equal weakness or failure, maybe even our loss of drive. But the truth behind all of this is that constant speed without strategy is a surefire way to lead to burnout, to breakdown, and to even the loss of the mission that we're actually chasing. And so in today's episode, we're going to dismantle the myth that faster is better. We're going to explore how slowing down strategically actually builds more momentum, more focus, and much more impact in our lives. And so if you're tired of running hard but feeling stuck, then stick with me in this, because this episode might just be the reset that you've been leading for so long. And so listen, if you've ever felt trapped in that relentless cycle of go, 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 only to realize that you're not getting any closer to what really matters, then I'd like to take a moment now, slow down and hit that like button. Subscribe to the show and drop me a comment sharing where you're struggling most slowing down. Because when strong men actually speak up and lean into this, we're not just helping ourselves, but we're giving permission for other men to do the same. So let's shift this culture and let's start working together.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life. Many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
So the first question I have for you is, when was the last time that you chose to slow down? And it's not because you had to, right? It's because you knew it was going to make you stronger. Question number 2, where in your life are you confusing busyness with real momentum and meaningful progress? And question 3, if you could master this art of slowing down without losing your drive, how would your leadership, your marriage, and your peace change in a year from now? We're calling out this invisible trap that most of us are running inside. And I ask these questions to help you really focus on coming up with an honest answer. So it's time for us to learn to slow down like a warrior and build a kind of momentum that doesn't crash when life gets heavy. And if we're ready to reclaim control, then this is where we're going to begin. And so with that, let's get on with today's episode. Welcome back, everyone, and I want to start off our conversation by this first discussion point in unpacking the myth that speed equals success. When we consider in today's world, men are bombarded with the message that relentless speed is going to be the key to winning, isn't it? And it's this hustle culture that glorifies the 4 a.m. wake-ups, the 18-hour working days, and the jam-packed schedules. And so if you're not moving faster than everyone else, guess you're losing. Or so, that's what we think, because that's what we're told. Here's the honest truth. Speed without strategy leads to exhaustion. It's not excellence. And so without clarity, all that movement becomes nothing more than a sophisticated procrastination. And so we're feeling busy, right? But we're actually drifting. We're not truly leading. And so it's this belief system that becomes deeply ingrained in our lives. And especially if we're entrepreneurs and high achieving men, we're going to tie our worth to how much we're doing versus whether or not what we're doing even matters in life. And so consider this, that speed can feel productive, but more often is masking a lack of clarity for us. And so moving fast will give us this illusion, won't it, of progress, that we're actually moving forward. So our days are packed, maybe our calendars are full, I know mine are. It looks impressive, doesn't it? But when you stop to slow down just long enough to think about what's going on in your life, you're going to realize that you're reacting instead of creating. And so without a clear target, we can truly be 100% busy and still be 100% off course. Just consider that for a moment. And so clarity, not velocity, is what's truly going to define our success. Imagine that we're grinding away to grow our own business, or we're in a business and we're grinding away. So maybe it's launching products, it's product after product, and we're not really stopping to ask, is this aligned with a bigger mission, my bigger mission? And maybe a few months later we recognize that not only are we burned out, but we're also disillusioned because none of this is truly making us feel fulfilled. And so speed has hid this lack of purpose. And so if we take a moment to slow down, we can recenter on why we're building and what we're building. It would have truly saved us time, money, and our own sense of meaning, wouldn't it? Here's the second thing to consider. There's an addiction to busyness. And the addiction keeps us from facing real emotional work. And so busyness isn't just going to be about our achievement, right? It's often we use it as a shield. And when we're constantly in motion, we don't have to feel the discontent that's really creeping underneath everything. Maybe it's from fears, it's our emptiness, maybe it's disconnection. All of this, for many of us as busy men, are there to help us avoid this uncomfortable truth. And so we stay busy. So when that happens, there are truths that we may not want to really discuss and dive into, and that may be with our marriages, maybe in our faith, or even in our purpose. And so again, I ask you to consider that if we're just throwing ourselves into our work, convincing ourselves that I'm doing this for my family, but if we really sit down and ask them what was truly behind all of this, is a pretty vulnerable conversation. And it's a conversation that you should be having with your wife, with our kids, maybe even with a close confidant. Because remember, being busy isn't noble. It's a defense mechanism. And so if we can take that opportunity to slow down, it's going to force us to confront where we're being absent. And it's going to give us a chance to rebuild what truly matters in our lives. And so slowing down is going to allow us to recalibrate, isn't it? It's not about retreating. It's about stepping up. It's about leaning into our awareness. It's about gaining wisdom about what's going on and realignment. Because true warriors retreat strategically to sharpen our weapons, to heal our wounds, and to rethink our strategy before we re-enter the battle, whatever that battle looks like. And so men who choose to not pause, we just don't burn out, but we risk losing the very mission that we're striving for. And so consider anything that you're working on. Maybe you're the CEO of your own company, but you're losing touch with your leadership because you're not taking a weekend retreat. You're not doing this for your family. So there's no meetings, there's no obligations. Maybe there's just silence, and there's opportunity for you to journal or to consider. And when you do that, you're going to have a much clearer vision. You'll be able to be much tighter in your communication, and you'll be far more powerful in your leadership. And so time away isn't about just slowing yourself down, but it's all about catapulting you forward in your life. And so speed's going to feel sexy. Busyness is going to feel heroic, but clarity, wisdom, and strategic stillness are where the real momentum is going to be built. And so if we can be men who can just dare to slow down on purpose, we're always going to outperform the man who just sprints blindly toward nowhere. And Socrates, I think, said it best when he says, beware the barrenness of a busy life. Let's move on to the second point I want to bring up about this. Why most men burn out without even seeing it coming. Consider this. Burnout doesn't announce itself with a warning siren, does it? It just creeps in slowly, and it's often going to be disguised as either normal stress or just being in a busy season. And as driven men, especially those who are wired to perform and achieve, are going to be highly vulnerable. See, it's not because of weakness, but because we are strong and stubborn enough to ignore these early warning signs. And so most men don't crash because we're incapable. We crash because we've been conditioned to believe that needing rest or recalibration or recovery is going to be weakness. And if we live at red line speeds until our mind and body and our marriage gives out, you know very well what's going to happen, don't you? So burnout is death by a thousand cuts, isn't it? It's not going to be just that one single late night that's going to break you, or that single fight that you might have with your spouse. Burnout is going to occur from an accumulation of small, seemingly harmless choices, right? It's the skipped workout, it's the lost sleep, it's the ignored spiritual practice, the emotional shutdowns that we have. And so every time that we make a choice to push through something, instead of recalibrating, we're just moving an inch closer to collapsing. And so consider that in our lives, when we keep promising ourselves that we're going to take a weekend off after the next big project or that next thing that's in our lives, then as time goes by, don't be surprised if it's a year later that you're going to wake up with chronic fatigue, a failing marriage, and no one left. And it wasn't that the one event broke you down. It was the daily refusal to rest. And so consider that our masculine energy thrives on cycles of push and then pause. And because our masculine power is all about rhythm and not constant force, even the elite warriors, athletes, or leaders understands this. Our true mastery is sustained during strategic recovery. And so if we're always pushing forward and never pausing, then we're eroding our own foundation. So let's think about it. We're in the midst of the Stanley Cup playoffs here in the National Hockey League. They train hard, but they're also prioritizing things like deep rest, sleep therapy, hot and cold therapy for their bodies to promote active recovery, and nutrition. All of these things help build themselves to be elite athletes. But you can realize that it's truly not a constant all-out assault during the game or the game of life. So it's measured cycles of energy exertion and then strategic recovery. And without these truly happening, then the performance would plummet, wouldn't it? Nobody can sustain that. So consider this. If elite athletes can build intentional rest into their preparation, what makes us think that we're above that? Because rest isn't retreat. It's about reinforcement. And so let's not ignore the warning signs that leads to our collapse, right? And so these early warning signs of burnout, irritability, emotional numbness, chronic fatigue, declining libido, strained relationships, these aren't just stress. They're signals that our soul and our mind and our bodies are calling for a realignment. So ignore them long enough, and guess what's going to happen? Our collapse won't be optional. It's going to be catastrophic. And so consider things like snapping at our kids for just minor mistakes, or stopping to connect with our wives, or hobbies that maybe brought us joy at one point and no longer give us any more joy. If we're constantly feeling tired and we can't sleep well, these aren't random. They're signs that our engine is overheating, and slowing down could prevent a total breakdown coming down the road, couldn't it? And so consider, as we think about this second point, that burnout doesn't really respect busyness. It doesn't reward loyalty to the hustle, and it sure punishes us who refuse to listen to the internal warning systems. And so if we can learn to slow down, it's the path to a sustainable, unbreakable leadership. So we need to truly take care of ourselves first. So that leads me to this third point that I want to bring up today, the power of strategic slowdowns. So we've been talking about how we can have more strategy so far in this episode with being able to slow down, and about how can we find the real sustained victory in our lives. And so in ancient times, seasoned fighters didn't fight all day, every day. They trained, they sharpened their weapons, they studied their enemies, they rested, because the battle required them to be precise. It wasn't just about raw effort. And so today, as modern men, we forget this. We think slowing down means losing momentum. But in reality, slowing down is the intention of what creates the momentum, of what truly matters most for us. So having deep focus, emotional resilience, and spiritual grounding, this we can put together and use it as a tactical advantage in accomplishing our mission. So the man who knows when and how to slow down doesn't fall behind, but we're actually going to rise above, won't we? And so how do we do that? We start with some reflection that's going to help us create more precision in our lives. So without reflection, our action is going to be blind, isn't it? And when we move fast without pausing to assess, you can waste time, years trying to climb the wrong ladder. I know that is something that has occurred for me many times in my career. And so when we start chasing someone else's definition of success or building things that we secretly resent, then we're going to need to slow down to have some honest reflection that bring us back into alignment with our mission, and that precision will help us beat anything that's standing in our way. If you were to take just an hour every Sunday and reflect on where did I lead well this week and where did I drift and what needs to be changed for the upcoming week, I think you find that practice over time really help focus on exactly what we need to do. So our actions will become much more aligned with our deepest values. And so the next thing to consider is that strategic slowdowns help us reconnect to ourselves and to our purpose. And so when life's moving a little too fast, it's easy for us to forget why we even started this and why we're doing what it is that we're doing. And so we can get caught up in deadlines and metrics and the noise. And we can lose that fire that really made us dangerous in the first place. And so having strategic slowdowns, whether it's a daily meditation, quarterly retreats, or just simply deep prayers and solitude, is really going to help us reignite the why in our life. Again, consider in our busy lives if we could take a 2-day silent retreat. No phones, no laptops, no agenda, just stillness, maybe some journaling. It's just quietness, because it's going to be in that space where we can reconnect with the original vision behind all the work that we're doing, the freedom, the impact, and the legacy that we've been striving to attain. It's really an opportunity for us to have clarity in our mission and then to get back on track to the things that truly matter in our lives. And so intentional slowing down is actually going to accelerate our true growth, isn't it? And so it does sound a little bit paradoxical, doesn't it? But slowing down to build a system, our habits, our spiritual practices, maybe even our emotional capacity is going to lead to exponential growth over time. Without these intentional slowdowns, growth becomes chaotic, it becomes erratic and easily destroyed by crisis, isn't it? And so making time for a strategic slowdown is going to help us build ourselves to become unshakable. So look at how often you're saying yes to things, because saying yes to every opportunity isn't always the best thing for us to do. Is if we focus on building core skills and deepening our key relationships, sharpening our leadership, instead of this constant idea of always being the new thing, we're going to find that grow much more when we can strategically learn to say no to things in our lives. And so slowing down isn't really an art. It's really about discipline, isn't it? And so those of us that can slow down with strategy, reflection, and purpose, we can build an internal engine that doesn't break even, and especially when life does get hard for us. And so we're not going to lose any momentum. We're going to actually redefine what momentum looks like. And I always appreciate the thoughts of Henry David Thoreau when he says, "It is not enough to be industrious, so are the ants. What are you industrious about?" I think that's very key for this particular point. So I'd like to talk about a gentleman by the name of Kevin. He's a 41-year-old entrepreneur, a man known for his relentless drive, and up before sunrise, emails firing before breakfast, client meetings stacked from morning till night. And to everyone else, he looked like he was winning, building and growing. But inside, Kevin felt a growing emptiness that he just couldn't shake. And so every day became a blur. Meetings, deadlines, deals. He was moving fast, but he couldn't remember the last time he actually felt something other than exhaustion. His marriage was on autopilot, and his friendships were distant memories. And that night, after the noise would die down, he would be in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering why he felt like he was losing a race he was supposed to be winning. But it came one day, his body gave out. He had chest pains, shortness of breath, and an emergency room visit that really shook Kevin to his core. It tested the rules and ruled out a heart attack for him, so thank goodness for that. But the doctor's words hit him harder than any diagnosis could have. The doctor told him, "Your body isn't broken, it's just exhausted. And if you don't slow down, something will break, and next time you might not walk out of here." Driving home from the hospital in silence, Kevin saw that it was clear that he was sprinting towards a cliff, and the worst part is that he just wasn't burning himself out, It was that he couldn't even remember why he was running so hard in the first place. And so somewhere along that way, he had traded meaning for motion, impact for image. Success he was chasing was costing him just about everything in his life. And so it was that night, that moment, that epiphany moment for Kevin, that he made a decision that he would slow down, not as a retreat, but as a revolution. He created boundaries that he never dared set before. He blocked sacred time for his wife, his kids, and especially for himself. He built morning routines of stillness, prayer, meditation, journaling, and before the world demanded any of his attention, he set his intention. And then he took quarterly solo retreats to review his life's trajectory, not just his financials. So soon Kevin was realizing that just this how much power there was to slowing down, and it really wasn't costing him any momentum. It was actually compounding it. And so he wasn't reacting anymore. He was choosing. He was marching with precision. And it was for the first time in his career that he wasn't surviving success. He was actually living it with strength, with clarity, and with gratitude. Fast forward 6 months and Kevin's business wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. But not at the cost of his health or his family. His marriage, vibrant again. His kids no longer saw a ghost at the dinner table. His mornings were filled with purpose, not panic. And his energy, once fragile and frantic, now felt forged in steel. Kevin learned that there's a secret very few men discover, that the man who masters himself, his pace, his presence, his priorities, masters everything else. Slowing down didn't weaken him, it weaponized him. And now he led his life like a warrior, not with constant struggle, but with calibrated, unstoppable strength. And so I think it's important that we look at Kevin's story, and there are a few tips and strategies that we can start to implement in our lives. And so one of the first things I want to talk about here is establishing a non-negotiable morning power hour. And it's a way to start our day that really dictates the energy that we're going to carry into every room, isn't it? A chaotic morning creates a reactive mind. If we can make a powerful morning routine, it's going to create us as centered leaders. And we can't lead our family and our business if we're not first leading ourselves and our minds. So the most common mistake that we're going to make as men is that we're going to wake up and instantly react to things. Try not to pick up that phone right away and do texts and emails or start to put out fires. Instead, just take a moment to pause. So before you're touching that phone, take anywhere between half an hour to an hour of structured stillness. And however that looks for you, maybe prayer and meditation isn't for you, but just taking a moment to contemplate what is about to come up for you in this day. If you become, like most of us, shallow breathers, it's a perfect opportunity to re-engage how we breathe. And so those of us that can build this into our daily practice are going to find that our days will start to become much more strategic. What's the next thing for us to master? The next tip I'd like to offer you is the 90-30 focus rhythm. This is something that brain science has shown us that we can operate at elite levels for about 90 minutes before our attention, our willpower, and creativity drops off. And I've heard varying degrees on that, 20, 45, 90 minutes. It's all relative in what you're doing. But the point is that there's a time limit of when we're going to truly be at our most focused self. And so once we pass that point, then our productivity is going to tank. And so trying to do this, live in this grinding nonstop for hours without a break, it's not going to make us a warrior. It's actually going to make us sloppy and reactive. And I think of those days where I'm sitting, working on the computer and pounding away, trying to get all this work done. I realize that after a while, the work is not as tight, it's not as succinct, and it isn't as impactful as it could be. Devise a plan in your strategy in your workday to do time blocking of 60 to 90 minutes to focus on a key task, and then create some space after that. Maybe that needs to be blocked in the calendar as well to prevent you from being booked on top of that. So you do have some time, and then get up and go outside and move the body. It's opportunity for us to refocus our lives. And so if we can respect this energy cycle that we have, I think you're going to find we'll be much more productive. And so let's look at the third option or tip to help slow down in our lives, and that is to design some sacred tech-free zones. Consider that our phones are really a portal of endless noise. And if we can't disconnect from it, then how can we reconnect to our mission, our faith, or our families? And so stillness is truly going to be impossible in a constant digital chaos that we live. And so keeping our phone within arm's reach at all times is going to train our brain for distraction, isn't it? And it's going to weaken our masculine presence because it's always right there within our reach. And so choose at least one block per day, ideally maybe around the dinner table or one weekend morning or something to that effect where the phone is going to be off, it's out of sight, and maybe even forgotten. Give us opportunity to reclaim the attention like a king reclaims his throne. There's a fourth option for us to consider, and that's taking a quarterly solo reflection retreat. And that might sound like a big thing, but I'll have you consider that if we evaluate our life trajectory at 70 miles an hour all the time, we're going to require us to really to slow down. And so to do that, some deep reflection demands us to have stillness in our lives, doesn't it? Silence and obviously solitude. And so if we can become men who regularly step back and see patterns that others are too busy to notice, then we're going to course correct far before we hit that disaster point. And so most men are going to wait for life to force us into some deep reflection. And it's going to be through that crisis and collapse or even chaos that we're going to finally look at making changes in our life. Or on the worst side of it, maybe it's total chaos for us. And so every 90 days, I'm going to ask you to block 4 to 8 hours for solo reflection. No meetings, no family obligations, and no electronics. It's an opportunity for you to journal. If you practice here with us in the Awakened Man and our Band of Brothers group, you'll have an annual goal that you're striving for. It's a perfect opportunity for you to reflect on your progress, where you're at, and what needs to be done in the next quarter. Men who do this focus on setting the intention for steering life with much more precision than others. It offers you an opportunity to build some momentum while others are just going to drift aimlessly into mediocrity. And here's the fifth piece I offer for you to consider as a tip and a strategy, and that's reframing slowing down as a tactical warfare. When I consider that the greatest warriors were never reckless, like the samurais, they were measured, they were deliberate, and strategically slow until the moment of the strike. And so in our lives, slowness isn't about surrender, and we talked about that in a previous episode. It's sharpening our blade. While others are swinging wildly, then they lead to burnout. And so when we start to equate that slowness or stillness with softness, I think we're forgetting that patience under pressure is a greater strength than blind aggression. And think about some of the elite athletes in our era that truly were able to slow down at the peak of pressure. And so next time that you're feeling anxious to act, pause. Just take a moment, breathe, and reframe that stillness as a strategic positioning opportunity. And then only move when it's time to strike with power and precision instead of flailing like with panic. And so this summary, and I think about these strategies that were provided for here, is that slowing down is really about developing our masculine discipline. It's not a retreat from strength, it's actually building it. And it's a path that leads us to power, to precision, and to permanent leadership. And so the men with the long game aren't going to be the ones who move the fastest. They're going to be the ones that move most intentionally. And so I was preparing for this episode, there are a few books and a PDF that I have for you today as resources. And so let's talk about our first book. And the book is called Essentialism. It is by Greg McKeown. He talks about it being addicted to doing more. And I think as high-performing men, we do get into that mindset. But it's going to redefine what success looks like by focusing truly on what is essential. And they really challenge us to ruthlessly eliminating all of the thing that isn't essential in our life. And so essentialism isn't about laziness. It's going to be about a disciplined pursuit. And so take an opportunity in this book to teach us how to say no to distractions and yes to the mission that truly matters in our lives. Second book I'd offer for you to consider is The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and that's by John Mark Cormer. And so this book is really going to expose how hurry is the enemy of spiritual depth and emotional connection, and of course, lasting impact. And so it offers lots of practical tools to help us build stillness in our lives, to slow intentionally without actually losing our leadership edge. And the last book is called Resilience, The Hard-Won Wisdom for Living a Better Life, and that's by Eric Greitens. And he's a former Navy SEAL, and he wrote the book to teach the difference between hollow toughness and true resilience. And so it's rooted in reflection, discipline, and internal alignment. This slow strength, not frantic speed, is really the core of what it means for us to have masculine resilience. As we look to wrap up the episode today, slowing down is not about weakness, it's going to be about wisdom. It's not surrender, it's strategy. And the men who leave legacies are those who lead their families and their businesses and their lives with strength. They're not the men who sprint blindly toward the burnout. These are the ones who slow down with purpose, recalibrate with precision, and move forward with unstoppable momentum. And so I have a challenge for you today, and it's simple. Stop worshiping speed. Start honoring strategy. Build a life that you're proud of, not the one that you simply survive in. And so if today's episode resonated with you, and if you're tired of living a reactive and exhausted and disconnected life, then it's time to act like the leader you're called to be. And so right now, go to members.theawakenedman.net and take our free integrity challenge. It's an opportunity for you to align your actions with your deepest mission. And while you're doing that, I also have in today's episode in the show notes to download an exclusive strategic slowdown blueprint. This is a tool that's designed to help you master your energy, sharpen your presence, and build unstoppable momentum in every area of your life. So take the challenge, download the strategic slowdown blueprint, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Revolutionary Man podcast. Stay well, my friends.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is the Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.